and live. Warp and Woof Radio, RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. We come to you every Wednesday from 11 to 11:50 in the morning. Grateful to be with you again. Thanks for your time and the opportunity you take to be with us here every Wednesday morning. Wanted to introduce the sponsorship for this particular show, which is the Comenius Institute. At the Comenius Institute, we cross three bridges. Our first bridge is into the college area, specifically on the campus of IUPUI, where I'm helping Christian college students to think Christianly about their subject areas and their disciplines and their futures, the things that they hear in the college classroom as well as those things they hear around campus. We're glad to be there, glad to teach there as well, glad for every opportunity that we have. We are also grateful to be invested in the community, and we do that in lots of different ways, most principally through our radio show, which we have been doing for over 3 years now. We have over 150 episodes. We've had over 200 guests, and we are grateful for every single person who has been here. We are introducing to Indianapolis to each other, and that's the real focal point here, is to showcase Christians who are doing good in the community, which is what we are all about. The third bridge that we cross is into culture, and so I'm constantly writing and speaking on lots of different things, lots of different new opportunities to be writing here. In fact, this week I'm writing like crazy because there are all kinds of things popping up for us in terms of essays as well as contributions to books, articles, things like this. Grateful for those opportunities, the latest of which, by the way, you can actually access on our websites, going to ComeniusInstitute.org and learn about the theological foundations of the abolitionist movement. But today, we are privileged to have Myra Lillard and Dee Kennedy back here with us again. Thankful ever so much for their great work in CIRA, which is the Central Indiana Realtist Association. And I'm going to be going off screen here so I can get these ladies in the queue here in our screen so that everybody gets to see them. And so we are grateful for you. Thank you ever so much for being with us here today and for your time and energy in and around Indianapolis. So thank you, ladies, for your participation in our show. Let's start with you, Dee, since you've been here before. Just kind of give us a little bit of background history, a little bit of biography about who you are and what you do.
Well, I am a Dolores Kennedy, of course, and I am a real estate broker. I have been in business for like 25 years, specializing in single-family homes, first-time home buyers, trying to educate others on the getting into home ownership, not only getting a home, but keeping their home and knowing how to maintain their homes. So in the group that we're in, that is what we're about, is informing, educating, and advocating home ownership. That's what we're about. That's fantastic.
And this is exactly what we want to showcase here today. We're talking about the Central Indiana Realtist Association on Warp and Woof Radio. And Myra Lillard is here. Thank you ever so much, Myra, for being here. Just give us a little bit of background on your biography.
Okay, well, thank you, first of all, for having me. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I am a real estate appraiser, residential and commercial. And I tell you, I've been doing it a little over 25 years as well, and just love to have the opportunity to serve the community. And often value is a key component of that. And as the Bible says, that my people perish for lack of knowledge. And so just to know that there is an honest broker out there, in terms of being able to let them know what value is and how that stacks up, whether it's a good decision to purchase or to buy, to sell, to invest. All of those things, taxation, we cover the whole gamut, and just being a part of Central Indiana Realtist Association has given me a platform to share and to contribute, so I appreciate that.
This is such an important work that y'all do, and I want everybody to know the history of the realtist word. Again, I think we have talked about this in the past. We have a podcast up if folks are interested in hearing about this the first time Dolores was here on the program with us. But I'd like you both to comment on that again, the historic background to the term realtist, because it's such a different term than we know today from realtor. So give us a little bit of history on that. Tell us about the background to those things.
Okay, well, the National Association of Real Estate Brokers was established in 1947, so a long time ago. And at that point, we could not be a part, blacks could not be a part of the realtors. And so actually even coming up with that name, there was a fight to claim that as well. So to create a differentiation to let, again, our community know that we are there, real estate professionals. So we kind of had to pioneer that. And so there was a consortium of black professionals from many states that came together to actually launch what is now called the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. And we also actually were a part of making the Fair Housing Act come to fruition. So we just celebrated that last year. So we have been pioneers, and yet we see that we remain viable in our community to help and to ensure that we have the opportunity to gain the knowledge and the insight for home ownership and to make it happen from a monetary standpoint as well, and to right some of the wrongs that have been done in our community as well. We know about that from 10 years ago, what happened. So with the housing crisis that we've been a part of, and just issues that come up through the decades that we are stalwart. We stand and fight for not only black people but all different disenfranchised people. So and we come together with hearts of one. So we're kind of like a rainbow coalition. You can see it, because we come together with the heart.
When you mention the concept of being one, I'm always mindful of Jesus' words in John chapter 17, where he says 3 times to the Father that they may be one, that they may be one. And the focus, of course, is to reflect the Trinitarian view that because you have 3 persons in one essence, you also have all of these different ethnicities, all these backgrounds, all these different folks, and they have to be one in the body of Christ. In the cultural history and background of this, we're also concerned about issues concerning justice. And this, of course, is one of the primary concerns of the Realtist Association. You mentioned the fight, and then you also, the fight to maintain and to commit to, or having a place to have real estate engagement with lots of different people. Tell us just a little bit about the Fair Housing Act. I don't think that's something that many of us really think about. So tell us about that and why that's an important issue.
Oh my, well, I tell you, it is everything. We have to make sure that we don't get lost. Things are pretty much set in terms of the majority standpoint. But when you look at the black community, our resources are a little different. The way we garner our credit is a little different. And so we have to make sure that housing is available for us as well. And so there is the misnomer that black America, we are not fit for home ownership in a broad scale. And actually that is not true. The FICO scores just don't, they're not set to actually tap into how we actually make purchases. That's just one example. But even to right the wrongs, even with HUD, at the beginning, there were things within deeds that wouldn't even allow us to purchase properties. We're talking about overcoming redlining. We're talking about overcoming predatory lending. So, and these aren't just things in the past. We're talking about we yet fight for these things. One of the initiatives that the National Association of Real Estate Brokers that we are a part of, we are called Realtist. We have actually, oh my goodness, has it been at least 5 years now that we've come up with the State of Housing in Black America Forum. And that has actually taken place. We work together with the forum that is there with the Black Congressional Forum, and they do that once a year. So the Sheba report comes out and really exposes where the the playing field needs to be leveled, if you will.
Yeah.
So each year we kind of tackle different things, and then we come up with solutions. And that kind of feeds into what the initiative has been, which is the 2 million new black home owners within 5 years. And so through that, we've been able to garner support from various lending institutions. We've been able to highlight that. So we're bringing that awareness even within Congress. So a lot of the legislation is addressed through that, and different issues that even come up that affect us in a way that might cause us to be disproportionately affected in a negative way is addressed. So that is something that it's held in Washington, D.C., typically in the fall, around September. And we have that platform, and it's actually proven to be quite enlightening. And so just kind of keeping that flashlight on of our relevance and what we're actually doing on a day-to-day.
One of the things that strikes me as I think not only about what y'all do in culture around us, but what happens generally throughout culture, all different aspects of injustices, that we have constantly a necessity to be vigilant. One of the things, that's a word that just keeps popping up for me in lots of different respects. Talk for a moment about the necessity of vigilance and the concept that that brings to your mind when I use that word, how we are, this is a constant issue, one that just never really goes away.
Some of the things, there's this saying that if you know better, you do better. But if we don't get that information, we don't know that we don't know. And so some of the things that we try to do is in educating people and letting them know that there is more out there. I had a friend, have a friend that was told, you never want to, her father, excuse me, had told her, you never want to own a house. You don't want to own a house because when the furnace goes out, when the roof goes bad, you can call somebody else to do that for you. You don't have to worry about doing this yourself. And I told her, I said, well, you have nothing of your own. You're paying for someone else to have equity in what you're paying for. And I said, you need this for yourself. And that's what we need to let people know, that there's the pushing people to know that there's equity and there's pride in home ownership. There not only pride in home ownership, you know that having something of your own that you can pass down to generations, to your children, your children's children, hopefully. Yes. And it building wealth helps us in our communities, because when we have that wealth and when we have that vigilance and doing something for ourselves, our neighborhoods look better.
This it strikes me to say this, as you mentioned, both home ownership and the development of wealth, that there are 2 of the 10 commandments at least that assume ownership, that assume private property. Don't steal and don't covet. Those 2 commands assume that somebody else owns something that you shouldn't steal or you shouldn't covet. We fast forward to Second Testament teaching in places like Acts chapter 4, 32 to 37, for instance, where it talks about the necessity of those who had in private ownership sharing with those who do not have. And this makes me think that we're not just sharing wealth, we're not just sharing things or material goods, we're sharing information. We're sharing knowledge, as Myra, you well said early on, and Dolores, you've just been emphasizing this necessity of helping people to know that this home ownership is building something for their futures. So let's kind of take that down the road just for a moment and address the issue of how do we think differently when we think about the next generation and when we talk about building wealth for the next generation. What are your thoughts that come immediately to mind when I say that?
I think when we know that we own, there's ownership in something, I think you take care of it a lot better. We were at a convention recently, and this gentleman said that his grandmother had passed, and they went to clean out the house. And he said his grandparents had lived in this house for 50 years, and he thought that they were going to sell their home. But their parents, his grandparents, had rented this house for 50 years. And I think he said that they had bought the house over 3 times, that they had paid 3 times what the house was worth in renting it all of these years. And so they not only didn't have anything for themselves, they were moving their things out as if they never existed so that next renter could come in, which makes it, really sad to know that they did not have the wherewithal, or didn't know, or hadn't been told, had never been taught that this is something, I don't have to rent from someone else or lease from someone else. This is something that I can have. But I go back to, when you know better, you do better. And you have to have someone that is letting you know that this is what you want. You don't want to rent for the rest of your life. You want to, when you get ready to tear down a wall, you don't have to call somebody to ask them if it's okay. You tear down the wall and, expand your room so that you can have open concept in your home. You have that option to have open out concept. For one thing, is just an example. But we need also to know that it's not a dream. It can be a reality if you just, I'm always telling stories, but I was in a restaurant not recently, and there was a woman, there were some people that were way in front of me, and I was ear hustling. Okay, so so I heard them talking, and he was saying something about he had just come from California, and he had said that he had just sold or purchased a house. I can't remember which. And she says, I'm glad you got through, because the only way that you can buy a house here in Indianapolis is you have to pay cash, or it has to be it has to go through HUD. And I'm thinking to myself, where do you get that? Where do people get that? And she was passing it on because there was a lot of people in line. So we passing along misinformation, and there may have been somebody that's in that line that thought that they could once own a home, but listening to that myth is what we're calling it. They might think, well, you know what? There's no need. I shouldn't try because I'll never be able to, because I don't have cash to purchase a home. So that is what we need to do, is to in pushing people and letting them know, informing is what we need. It's informing.
Yeah, absolutely, and I fully concur with that. And I tell you, Dolores is just fantastic as our leader within our organization, because you mentioned the word vigilance, and I believe that embodies our mission. And not only with Realtors Week coming up, of course, we're going to be talking about the ABCs of home buying and so many other things in terms of how to establish credit, how to repair credit, just all the nuances of the entire process. But it does require vigilance. So throughout the year, she's put on platforms, she and her team, to educate our community. And that's where it starts. We cannot assume that someone knows the process. So we're out there heralding the cause of home purchasing, but preparation as well. Because we not only want our community to be homeowners, but we want them to be educated, so it's not just about a transaction. We want it to have longevity, so we're talking about legacy building, wealth building. And so the more that we can gird up the community with knowledge, with that information, not assuming that they've learned it in school, not assuming that someone trained them and taught them the right way. We're out there on the front lines making sure that they're going to be quality home owners.
Pushing the message is really important. You're listening to Myra Lillard here, as well as Dolores Kennedy from CIRA, which is the Central Indiana Realtist Association. And those of you watching Facebook Live don't necessarily see my face. I'd much rather have you see these ladies, and thank you so much for that. But I also wanted to just mention before we go to break, one of the things that Dolores mentioned just a moment ago about telling stories. please don't stop telling stories. Tell stories all the time, because stories are what really motivate people to action. You're listening to Warp and Woof Radio, RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. We come to you every Wednesday from 11 to 11:50. And this particular day, we are going to be taking a one-song break. And when we come back, we will be talking once again with Myra Lillard and with Dolores Kennedy. Thanks ever so much for joining us. One song break. We'll be right back. Facebook Live, thanks for hanging in there with us. My inability to keep my tripod in place. Thank you for.
Blame it on the producer.
I wouldn't ever blame it on my twin. Never, ever. No, this is really going great, ladies. Thank you ever so much for all the good information. It's fantastic. And so we're grateful for the opportunity to actually interact with these things. Whenever I come up to multiple names and multiple words in a title, I'm always messing stuff up. So thank you for being patient with me and hanging there with me. The issues that you're bringing up are, I keep talking about issues of justice and those kinds of things. I think that's really a powerful and important concern for all people across the board. It doesn't matter ethnicity, doesn't matter class, doesn't matter nationality. None of that stuff matters. What matters is, do we see people with worth, value, and dignity because they've been made in God's image? And so that's really where we want everybody to come out at the end of the day and focus on those kinds of things. So if you're, by the way, I'll just mention this because it flew through my brain for a moment. If you're ever interested in having a statement someplace, and I know that yours is a public agency, but if you ever want to have a biblical theological statement, a paragraph about why you think this is important for the Christian community, or why you think that this particular emphasis is driven supernaturally from the one who made us, I'd be happy to help with that if that's something you ever want to do.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah.
Where you ladies worship? Church.
I'm twofold.
Okay.
I am a member of Overcoming Church, but my Sunday school. Overcoming does not have a Sunday school.
Right.
So I'm a Sunday school member of Grace Apostolic Church, and so I love Sunday school. I
Man, that
love
is the root.
I tell you.
Remember what we were just talking about in there?
Yeah.
And I tell people, as you get older, it's your option on whether you want to do church like I had to do church.
Yeah.
Kids should have to do church.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, not giving any room to folks who don't want to go when they get older.
Yeah.
But children need church,
Yeah.
especially our children, because that's the only sense of social structure that they're going to see before they go to school.
Yeah.
I mean, no defense. Young white kids play tennis, they play baseball, they swim, they have all these cultural things that they're doing just in their everyday life. Our kids get picked up by grandma when mama go to work.
Yeah.
When grandma get the boy and she tired of him, the sister comes and picks him up at 4 o'clock till the sister gets off her second job. And that triangle doesn't create the psyche of dealing in a social setting. So church was where I learned to be. I got pinched in my ear and that little fat under. Man, I said, my grandma, how did she see all this stuff? But seriously, it had me prepared to know I couldn't act any way in certain places. And that's where we learned our social skills.
That's right. And Myra is a member of
The Caring Place.
Okay.
Yeah, and we do have Saturday church for just that. So we go out in the community and we get those little ones and we have Saturday church.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
It's so important, but we act like we don't pick up on those little nuances.
Oh,
But
yeah.
that's major. That is major.
It is. It really is.
10 seconds, Mark.
10 seconds. Oh my, fast break. And we are back. Warp and Woof Radio at RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. Every Wednesday from 11 to 11:50, our great producer, Harold H.B. Bell, my twin, my brother. Grateful for our...
They're looking for you.
We like to have a little jaw time here in the studio. Harold H.B. Bell has been doing this for 8+ years. Grateful for our 3 years together and over 150 episodes with over 200 guests. We're grateful for those those opportunities. Looking forward to a different venue in a couple weeks. We'll be shifting to a new place and a new space, so looking forward to that. But today, we have the special privilege of having the Central Indiana Realtist Association with us. Myra Lillard, Dolores Kennedy are here, and I'm going to shift these for Facebook Live viewers, going to shift it away from me, back toward these ladies. And we're going to be talking here in just the last segment of this show about the Realtist Week and the practical outworkings and implications of what does it mean for home ownership, fair housing, and wealth development within not just the Black community, but in all communities where people may be disenfranchised, may need help that isn't afforded to them in other places, and just generally speaking, need the kind of education and information this particular association can give. So once again, grateful for having you on the show, ladies. Thank you ever so much for your dedication and your service to the community. Let's talk a little bit, since we're engaged in this particular discussion here about Realtist Week. Let's promote that a little bit and talk about that upcoming week in April.
Realtist Week is a week of information. We have fair housing. Actually the Realtors Week is formally from the April 7th. I'm getting on tight time. April 7th to April 13th, but we tie in April 3rd as well, because that's our Fair Housing Summit, and we have all of our group go there, and we spend the day with fair housing issues. And so that starts it off. And then during the week of the following week, we have different things that's going on. One day we do a day of service where we're going to be at the Catholic Charities, where we will do volunteer there. Many of our members will go there. And then we have a membership night where we'll have a bunch of people from the community come in and to get more information about CIRA, our group, Central Indiana Realtors Association. And then on that Saturday, which is our community day, which is our big day, we're going to have a day of information informing. We'll have our lender council, which will have people that will help to in informing people and what's the word I want to use? Informing people. Lost it. Anyway, letting people know, counseling people on home ownership, getting your credit in order, what you need to do to start. It could be somebody that is ready to purchase a home tomorrow. It could be 2 years down the line, but we have people that will walk them through the process, tell them what they need to do, all of these things that they need to do in order to become a homeowner. And then we will have panels there where we will have financial planning. We will have the ABCs of home buying, how to get started, because sometimes people don't know how to get started. They say, I want to buy a house, and then they go down the street and they see a sign in the yard and they call that person. And we don't want them to call a person there. We want them to call someone that's going to be speaking on their behalf. They are somebody that's going to be working in their best interest, because as I tell people all the time, when you call the number on that sign, they're working for the person behind that door. And so we want them to know that they have an advocate that will work for them and primarily for them, and then they will be able to give them all the information that they need, the pertinent information that they need to purchase a home. We have a down payment assistance. We'll have someone from IHCDA that will come, and they will tell them about their down payment assistance that they offer. And how to get over the fear of home buying. As I said before, I had a young lady that said that her dad told her never purchase a home. We want to let people know that there is no fear in it. And one of the things I tell people, say that it's such a headache in order to get ready to purchase a home. And I tell them the only headache that they should have in this, home buying should be an experience, not a headache. And what it should not do is, the only problem that you should have is if you've seen 4 or 5 homes and you've got to decide which one of those homes that you want to to purchase. It should not be a dread, and we want to let people know that there is life after that dream. And it doesn't always have to be just saying, I wish I could. You can. And we can, as I said, it could be the next day, 2-3 years down the line. We have people that's in our group that will walk them through and will stay with them through that process, so that they can be homeowners and be so happy, to have that sign in front of them to say first time home buyer.
It strikes me that there's some important words here. I've heard the word community, communication, and then counseling. And so when we think about building communities, the necessity of coming together with other people that are going to help us seems like that ought to be just kind of second nature to Christians. This is actually what we're supposed to be doing for and with each other. And then, of course, the communication issue is, like we say in real estate, location, location, location. Communicate, 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 because this is the only way people are going to learn. Back to your myth statement where you were ear hustling.
Yeah.
And by the way, I have never heard that phrase before. Thank you very much for attuning me to a new cultural high here. Overhearing, for those of in my bailiwick, that's what I would call that, ear hustling. I'm going to be thinking about that for a while. Anyway, back to that story that you suggested where people are passing along mis- and disinformation, actually, which is really an unfortunate case. So, and then beyond that, the counseling. So once you communicate it, you have to actually come alongside people and go through the process of constantly talking about this over and over and over again. So this is something that's an ongoing process, something that's going to take a long time, years and years and years, not only to develop, but then to sustain in the years and the decades yet to come if Jesus doesn't return anytime soon. So those are important and powerful concerns for us. Myra, let's jump back to you for just a moment and talk a little bit about the history that you have in this particular association. As I understand from some of what I read, you were a past president, is that correct?
Yes.
Of the association. Tell us about the importance of leadership in this organization. You had mentioned Myra's good leadership, Dolores' good leadership. Let's talk about the kinds of leadership that you brought, some of the things that you made a difference in as you were creating and prospering and promoting CIRA throughout these years.
Well, I tell you, I don't know, I would say great leadership, but certainly the start. And in every new venture, it takes someone to take that helm. And so I was that person. But I think we had a great start. This was back in 2012, actually. So we were the charter organization, and of course Dolores a part of that, and spearheaded so much of that. But we had a dream, we had a vision. We wanted to make an impact within Indianapolis. We knew what the National Association has done across America, and why not here, where you have a group of dedicated professionals with one mind, one heart, and willing to stick with it. And so I believe that our core group had the tenacity, had that mindset to get started and to situate ourselves in such a way that we had that staying power. So we had our little bumps along the way, but thank goodness for a good consortium of people. We were able to weather that. We were able to grow. I think we started with 10, and now we have well over 50 dedicated members. We're not just talking membership, sign on the roll, but people that are actively involved. We have membership meetings once a month with just amazing information, chock full of to help everyone in pretty much anything that is related to real estate, housing. We had one actually dealing with the 5-year plan in terms of the White River park, just to kind of keep people abreast of what's happening, how we can position ourselves, how we can help. So it's building the professional but it's also giving us enough information that we can take it back to our home buyers, the community at large. What are the programs out there that would help a struggling homeowner to replace their furnace or to patch their roof? Or, so we have members such as INHP that have those kind of programs. So it's a lot of sharing that goes on, and it didn't just happen today. I think we started, our core values are such that we have always wanted to give back. We've always wanted to build up not only ourselves but those around us. And to have that staying power, not so much a cliche or making, again, like I said, a transaction, but to have ourselves positioned in the community where they know us, that they know that we care about them, that whatever the situation is that comes up, if we can at all help, that we will. And so we find ourselves pretty much in a resource position as well. So even in terms of the collaboration that we do with the purchaser that may not qualify with XYZ company. So we've actually established through this leadership that we have here, and Diana before her, a lenders council. It's a panel of lenders that saying, hey, let's just put our resources together here and figure this thing out. We may not be able to get them positioned at this particular company, but the program that's at the other company may be able to help. So that level of sharing, you just don't see it in most places. We're competitive by nature. Everyone's looking out for their fiefdom, but not at CRA. And so that's just been a continual encouragement for me. Even as a stand buyer, just kind of look in and say, wow, we're doing this. And we're doing it year after year after year. And it's growing. And all the programming that's been set from past leadership, starting, of course, with myself, it's just gotten better and better. Not only Realtus Week, but also our flagship program that deals with our luncheon that comes up, our Trailblazer Luncheon. That's, again, giving recognition. Of course, people do things from the heart. We have primarily Christian values. I mean, we've just all been connected like that. And so part of that is saying, hey, let's recognize those that have gone before us, those that have made an impact not only in our lives. You mentioned the fact of, just celebrating women. My greatest hero, I should say, is my mom, because she let me know about home ownership. And it's something that, the example that Dolores gave with getting counseling from someone, not to enter into that, we take those things to heart. So if I have a mom such as mine to say, hey, one of the key things that you have to do if we're talking about legacy and wealth building, you have to own something. So that stuck with me because I wasn't always involved in real estate. I've had my other former life in corporate America, and it's like, because of her example, real estate was one of the first things that came to my mind in making a career change, because I entered into family life with children and things like that. So it showed me that I had the freedom to be able to do something beyond what I could see right in front of me. And so she gave me the ability to dream and to say, Myra, there are possibilities here, you can do it. So for me, she was the trailblazer. And so I was so happy when Dolores had come up with that. Say, how perfect. And you see so many people in our community, this is probably the only time that they've really been recognized. And so for us to have some small part in that is just it's just a tremendous experience. So I can go on and on, but just
that's okay. No, this is your time to highlight those kinds of things. That when you mention the issue of trailblazers and pioneers and so on, I'm always mindful of what Paul said in Romans 15. He said, I don't want to build on anybody else's foundation. And his whole point, of course, was that this message and his work should go into various places in ways and by means and with people that may not have heard in the past. So that's a real important concern for us. as we think about this particular luncheon. By the way, when we talk about the luncheon, let's talk about that just for a moment, because that's coming up in June, and I want to give you just an opportunity, even though it's a few months away, to give a plug for that and why that's so important.
This luncheon, as Myra has said, it is to recognize those that may or may not have ever been recognized before. And some of the people, some of the recipients of that, and one of the big, Myra has been a recipient of that. Myra has one of the highest accreditations of appraisals in the United States, and she was our first president. So we're so happy to have had that opportunity to have had her to be our president. We've had the first person that was ever able to be a member of my board, which is Metropolitan Indianapolis Real Estate in Metropolitan Indianapolis
Board of Realtors.
Board of Realtors. I'm so sorry. She was our first. She was denied 3 times to be a member because of a color skin. So she was able to, when we recognized her as being a trailblazer, because she blazed the trail. Without her, we wouldn't be here. So that's one of the people. We have someone that was the first minority franchise here in Indiana. So these are the people that we want to recognize. I mean, we feel like these are people that have blazed the trail for us so that we would be able to be who we are today. And so that's where that came from, because we know that there are people that have done things and nobody's ever said anything. They did it, and that was it. But we're glad that we have been a part of that. As I said last time when we were here, we had the gentleman over in Ransom Place that was one of the first home builders over there, and they came a few years back and they were wanting to take that land to make a big majority grocery store, but those people fought because they could not go anywhere else. Where they finally were able to go, they were trying to upset them from there. They stood their ground and they stayed there, and they're still there. He has since passed, but that community of people, a lot of the people that live in that area, Ransom Place, that started there, if they're still alive, they're still there, or either their families are still there in that area.
It strikes me that as we think about some of these issues, that one of the concerns that we ought all to have, no matter who we are, is the concern that sometimes green trumps every other color, and that we are driven by our monetary excesses. So let's come back to the issue of wealth development, because I really want to make sure that everybody gets this. We're talking with 2 ladies here from the Central Indiana Realtist Association who are in the process of not only developing people, but helping people develop wealth. And that's really a crucial concern for us as we think about our own families. So let's go back to that for just a moment. And I heard you both use the word legacy a moment ago. Part of the legacy that we leave, Proverbs is very clear about this, that the benefits that a father leaves to his children are those things which are material goods. It's not the only thing, of course, that he or his mom should leave, but it is a key concern. So let's talk about the necessity of building wealth for the next generation and why that's so important for everybody.
Absolutely. Well, I can tell you, first of all, without financial literacy, we're up a creek without a paddle. And so it really has to start at a rudimentary level. We have to learn to budget. We have to, and quite honestly, for every dollar, at least this is how it's been in my home, that we believe in tithing. So there are principles that have to start at the core. And so we have to give to the work of God. We have to give to ourselves in savings. And then we have that extra that's left over to do what we have to do and see how well we can be stewards over it. So I think with what we have, we've certainly done it in the past in terms of even incorporating financial literacy, even for the young people. So it really does start there. So we have to get that mindset that we have to be ready. We have to be ready, and you can never start soon enough. And so this is where with home ownership, I think with moms and dads in the home, of course, we've had to overcome a lot of obstacles. Now, especially in the Black community, where we're talking, 70% are with, raised by moms only. We're having to overcome hurdles, but that doesn't mean that we can't overcome. That just means that we have to work a little harder. So that's why we play such a role to let our neighborhoods know that we are there to assist and to help, and we have some of our members that go into the school system to do training in financial literacy, to learn that maybe a bank account is a good thing to have, maybe a savings account is good to have, and you can start at a very young age. And maybe the detriment of buy here, pay here, okay? Or going to some exchange place to cash a check that's going to charge you all these service fees, that you'll have to do if you don't start, establishing yourself. So just little things. It's the slight edge effect. So you don't have to do anything big at once, but we start with the mindset. And in honoring ourselves, honoring God, honoring those that are our elders in training us. And sometimes it's in the home and sometimes it's outside, but we are one big community. So with that, I think that's the basic level that we have to launch for our young people. And then it's easier now when we're talking home ownership, because we have a baseline, we have a good foundation to build on, then we can start bringing our young people in with a different mindset as opposed to spending, working from paycheck to paycheck.
And they themselves then are learning by your own practices and the example you set before them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Dolores, from your point of view, when you think about building wealth and legacy into the next generation, what are your thoughts about that?
My thoughts are teaching starting early. As Myra has said, I have a granddaughter that, I have 3 grandchildren that when they were born, I opened bank accounts for all of them. And then every time I would have a transaction close, I would all put money into their accounts each time. And so as they got older, when they would get, now my granddaughter, back to my granddaughter, if you would give her 50 cents, 45 cents would always go into the bank. She's always been that way, and she's 24 years old now, and she still does that today. Of course, I have a grandson that if you gave him 50 cents, he's going to spend 55 cents. But he's better today because he has learned the values of having something. And what we want to do is teaching them early so that they will have that foundation and know that if I save today, then I can get this tomorrow. And it's okay to wait till tomorrow, because sometimes we're in this popcorn society where we want everything right now, and we have to get to the point where we understand that sometimes it takes a little while. It may not all come at once, and as I was saying, sometimes people want to buy homes very early, and sometimes they get into that rent to buy or that contract sale that it ends up making them in worse shape than when they started. And that's why the education comes in, informing people, advocating for home ownership, but home ownership the right way, that they will not just get into anything, because it's happened. It happened back when we were having the crash, and it'll happen today unless you get, pull someone's coattail and say, you know what, hold on. And because I am a salesperson, a broker, but I would rather, and I have done this times before, I've said, you know what, it's not time. Now, you would think, that's my bread and butter. That's how I'm going to eat. But I want them to get into their home and to stay there, and to be able to and stay there until they're ready to move on to the next home. So I'm willing to have someone to tell someone, you know what, it's just not time yet. And I've had some that have waited, and I've had some that go on to do the home contract, and they regret it, and they come back and they'll say, you know what, I should have listened. Now I'm ready to wait. So it's giving them that education, giving them that foundation, and letting them know that it doesn't always come overnight. It sometimes takes some time.
This has been a fantastic discussion here with Myra Lillard and also with Dolores Kennedy. And I just let your granddaughter know that I'll be calling her later about a loan. I mean, really, seriously. This has been a great discussion, and thank you, everybody, Facebook Live, for hanging in there with us. Thanks for your constant interest in this particular show, and all of the folks that we're bringing forward to see every single week as we bring Indianapolis Christians who are doing good in and around the community. Next week, we'll be back again at 11 o'clock. We'll look forward to that. Pick up our podcast later on. It'll come out later on this week. We will push that out along with our friends here, Myra and Dolores. Thanks again to HB for his producing behind the scenes. Grateful for him. For Josh Collingwood, who does all of our tech work. And then also for Polly Riddell, who makes such tremendous connections for us in and around the community. You've been listening to Warp and Woof Radio, RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. We'll see you next week.